All right, let's jump right in. Think about this for a second. Have you ever tried to teach someone a new skill? Something that feels super obvious to you, but for them it's just not clicking? Well, today we're going to break down this really powerful, structured technique designed for exactly that situation. It's called prompting, and believe me, it can be a total game changer.
So how do we learn stuff in the first place? For most of us, right, it starts super early. We don't even think about it. We see our parents wave, we wave back. We see other kids stacking blocks, and what do? We try to stack them too. So much of our learning is really just watching and copying.
But here's the big question. What happens when a child doesn't learn by just imitating others? When that natural instinct to copy just isn't there? For some kids, especially those with autism or other developmental delays, this can be a huge roadblock. So, if watching and learning isn't cutting it, what's the plan? How do we step in and help them get the skills they really need?
And that's exactly where a different game plan comes into play. We've got to find a way to build a bridge, right? A bridge from the what to do all the way to the doing it correctly. And that bridge, well, that's what we call a prompt.
So, what is a prompt, really? When you boil it all down, it's actually super simple. It's a hint. That's it. It's just a little bit of extra help that you give someone to make sure they can get the right answer. It basically takes all the guesswork out of the equation for them.
And, some researchers, McClanahan and Krantz, they put it perfectly. They said prompts are basically all the little things that we arrange or do to increase the likelihood that children will make correct responses. So we're talking about instructions, gestures, even physical touches. It's all about setting the learner up to win.
Okay, so it's really helpful to think of prompts not as just one thing, but more like a whole toolkit, right? I mean, you wouldn't use a hammer to fix everything, would you? It's the exact same idea here. There are different kinds of prompts for different jobs, and the trick is knowing which tool to pull out of the box.
All right, first tool in the kit, the gestural prompt. This is just what it sounds like. Simple physical cues. You can be pointing to the right picture, nodding your head, or just kind of motioning toward the right object. It's a hint, but without saying a word.
Next up, we've got the positional prompt. Now this one is pretty clever. All you do is move things around. You put the correct item just a little bit closer to the person, making it the easiest and most obvious thing for them to grab.
So here's what that looks like in the real world. Let's say you ask, point to the animal. See how the dog is just a tiny bit closer than the apple? That's it. That's the prompt. We're making the right choice the easy choice. It's this super subtle, silent nudge in the right direction. Then, of course, there are verbal prompts. This could be anything, really. It might be giving just the first sound of a word, like saying "buh" if the answer is ball, or it could be saying the whole word for them. You're basically using your voice to help guide theirs.
A visual prompt is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. You're using a visual to help out. This could be a picture of what the final product should look like, a checklist with all the steps written down, or even a quick video showing them what to do.
Now we're starting to get into the more hands-on types of help. This is a partial physical prompt. So we're not talking about full control here. It's more like a gentle touch to kind of get things moving in the right direction. Think of it like gently tapping someone's elbow to get them to start reaching.
And that brings us to the most supportive tool in our entire kit, the full physical prompt. You've probably heard this called hand-over-hand assistance. This is where you physically guide the person's hand or body through the whole entire motion from start to finish.
And this right here is a perfect example. When you're teaching someone to write, you can use that hand-over-hand guidance, physically moving their hand to form the letters with the pencil. This gives them the maximum amount of support, and it helps make sure they learn that correct motor pattern right from the get-go. Okay, so we've got our toolkit, right? We've got all these different prompts, but just having the tools isn't the whole story. You need a strategy. You need to know when to use each prompt and in what order. And that, my friends, is where the prompting hierarchy comes in.
So check this out. The hierarchy is basically a way of organizing all those prompts we just talked about. It arranges them from the least intrusive, the smallest amount of help, like a visual cue, all the way down to the most intrusive, which is that full physical prompt. It's like a roadmap for how to give help.
So how do we actually use this thing? Well, the most common strategy is called least to most prompting. And the rule is really simple. When you give an instruction, you always start at the top of that hierarchy. You give the least amount of help you think they'll need to get it right.
Let's make this real. Let's walk through an example. Imagine you're teaching a child to eat with a fork, okay? Step 1 is just the natural cue. You put the plate and the fork on the table. And then you wait. If nothing happens, you go to the next level. A gestural prompt. Maybe you just point to the fork. Still no action? Okay, time for a partial physical prompt. You gently guide their hand toward the fork. And only if you still need to, you use that full physical, hand-over-hand prompts to guide the whole thing. See? You're only giving as much help as is absolutely needed right then and there.
So, why are we doing all this? What's the point of this whole system? What's the end game? It all boils down to one single critical goal: independence.
And this brings us to a really, really important point. The prompts are just the tool. They're not the final product. See, there's a risk here, and it's called prompt dependency. That's when the learner just waits for the hint instead of trying on their own. That's what we want to avoid. Our goal is the total opposite. It's called prompt fading. We want to slowly, systematically pull back our support as their own skills get stronger and stronger.
And here's the cool part. When you use that least to most strategy, the fading part can happen pretty naturally. As that child gets better and better at using the fork, you'll just find you don't need the physical prompt anymore. And then a little while later, you probably won't even need to point. The support just kind of falls away as their own skill takes over.
And that's really the main thing to remember here. The prompt itself is not the goal. Think of it like temporary scaffolding on a building. The real goal, the true goal, is for the learner to not need any of it anymore. For them to be able to do the skill, whatever it is, confidently, correctly, and completely on their own. The prompt is just the path you take to get there. Independence, that's the destination.